guys, my name is Sam, and if you're new here, I make videos about makeup, chronic illness, and whatever I want. Today is another edition of Sam's Beauty School, where I teach you about foundation and concealer. I will say, I'm an amateur. I'm not a professional makeup artist, so I might get something wrong, or I might forget something, but we're gonna roll with it anyway. Let's start with the different types of foundation. The first is going to be liquid, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, which comes in a little pump. Now, some of them don't come with a pump, like this, or like some CoverGirl. And actually, this didn't come with a pump either. You had to buy the pump separately. But you understand, it's a liquid. The next foundation is a cream foundation, and this can come in a stick or a compact, and it is thicker. It applies the same as a liquid foundation, but it's often more like a face paint kind of texture. And then we have powder, which can come as a loose powder like this, or it can come in a pressed form as well. Finally, we have a skin tint or a serum, which comes in like a dropper bottle, similar to this, but with a dropper on it. And that's just something to even out complexion. Not exactly a foundation, but I wanted to include it anyway. Now we'll move on to the types of coverage from foundation. So you have a very light or sheer, which is often your skin tint or serum foundations. It won't cover any imperfections or anything on your skin like freckles. It just very much evens out the color. So it's nice if you don't want to look like you're wearing makeup, but maybe you have a little bit of redness you want to tone down. Then you have medium, which is what most of my foundations are. It is buildable, but it covers most imperfections. You can see I had a very red pimple. You can still kind of see it, and you can still see some stuff on my chin, but most everything is covered. Then you have full coverage, which would basically hide everything. It's a very thick, almost like face paint kind of coverage. And some people don't like the way that that feels because it is quite heavy. I would say both medium and full are buildable, which means you can layer it to create more or less of a desired effect. Like a lot of medium coverage foundations, you can build up to be a heavier medium or a light full. And a full coverage foundation, you can usually apply less and get more of a medium coverage. Next, we have foundation finishes. First, we have a natural finish, which is what I'm wearing today. It's incredibly skin-like. It isn't too dewy and it isn't too matte. It looks just like your skin. Next, you have matte. This is a very popular foundation because it lasts the longest and it is the most transfer resistant. However, it isn't exactly perfect for texture or mature skins because it's incredibly flat and there's no sort of luminosity to it. So it can make parts of your skin, like this area or like my forehead, as you can see, is textured. Some matte foundations just make that stand out a lot more. Matte is great if you do have oily skin though. It'll keep the oil at bay, so you won't have to blot as much through the day. Dewy foundation is incredibly glowy. I have a light glow from this, but dewy definitely makes it look like you're on a tropical beach. You're not sweaty, but you're definitely glowing. It's a nice reflective kind of finish. This isn't great for oily skin. I also feel like it isn't great if it's something you want to wear for like a whole day or something, because I think it does wear off a little easier just because it doesn't really set down at all. Now let's get into the reason most of you are here, is to figure out how the hell do I even pick a foundation? Where do I start? So you do have the option of being color matched at a location, such as a department store counter or a Sephora. I will make a note that I haven't had the best of luck with the color IQ at Sephora because I heard from a little bird that the little camera they use can be impacted by the lighting of the environment. Sephora is kind of dark, and every time I've had it done, it matches me to foundations that are at least 2 to 3 shades darker than my skin, so it's not exactly helpful. So if you choose to do that, I had the best luck in a department store because it's incredibly bright. Everything around me is white, it's reflecting light, so I was really lucky to get a great color match in that regard. When you get color match, you can often get little samples like this guy. I keep this one around for swatching purposes. It's too old to put on my face, but it's good for like an arm swatch to compare some stuff. And then you can try finishes out, see how you like it, see if the formula works for you, see if the color works for you, and go from there. So even if you don't want to get color matched at Sephora, I think they're doing samples again. They stopped with COVID, but as long as it's in a pump, I think they can give you a little sample. They used to be able to, so don't hold me to that. Now, if you get color matched and you just don't happen to like the foundation, maybe it broke you out, or maybe you just can't afford something that expensive, you can use websites like foundation.com, or you can use Sephora's website and find a foundation by entering in the brand and color, and it will give you suggestions that are very similar. Now, let's say you don't want to go in anywhere and you just want to do this on your own. Maybe you don't live close enough to a department store or Sephora. Fair. Some of us are just lone wolves and want to try it our best. Let's talk about undertones. Undertones can for real make or break your makeup experience. When I was first starting my journey and trying to find a foundation, I was convinced I was too pale for everything. Everything was too dark. And that's because everyone was giving me cool tone pink foundation. Why? Because my face was red from irritation. And I will say, a lot of us have redness on our face, so it's very important when someone is color matching you to find parts of your face that aren't red, like maybe here, maybe your neck, maybe your chest, to get your actual skin color, because redness can come from many things and it isn't necessarily your skin tone. So once I finally found that my undertone was not being matched correctly and they were just matching the redness of my irritated skin, finding foundation became so easy. Incredibly easy. I find most of my foundations just by descriptions on the internet, which makes makeup shopping so much better. But figuring out my undertones was kind of difficult because I didn't actually understand how to do it. And most people don't. It's kind of difficult. You kind of just hear well, look at your veins. What color are your veins? That's not always easy to figure out. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what are the undertones? First, you have warm undertones, which are golden, yellow, and peachy. I have a hint of yellow in my skin, but I'm not warm. Sometimes brands are a little weird about how they label their foundations. Like this guy here. This is considered light, and so is this. It gets a little confusing. But I promise, once you figure it out, once you get your sea legs, you could do it. We have a cool undertone, which is pink, red, or bluish tones. And then you have neutral, which is me, which is a mixture of both warm and cool. So I got a little bluish to my skin. I got a little yellow to my skin. But also, let's add in here olive. Olive is not an undertone alone. Olive can go with any of these other undertones that I listed. For myself, I am a light neutral olive. I have a hair warmth, which is yellow. I tend to appear more warm when I have a tan, but I'm still incredibly neutral. Now let's talk about the vein situation. This is what I found on the internet. If your veins appear blue or purple, you will have a cool undertone. If your veins appear green, you have a warm undertone, and you might be wondering, what if I have all three? Then you're likely a neutral. Olive does not affect your vein undertones at all. If you look at the photo of my veins, I have both green and purple, and every few spots you'll find one that's blue. Like, I have a blue one, you can't really see. I got a blue one there. These ones are green. I'm neutral. If your veins aren't easily seen, like there are some people who don't really have visible veins at all, or they're kind of up here and they all sort of look the same color, that can be kind of difficult. So there is another test that I thought was pretty helpful trying it, already knowing my undertones. I took some pictures in a white t-shirt. You can either do it with a white t-shirt or a white piece of paper, something white. If you look more yellow in your white t-shirt, then you're probably warm tone. If you're wearing white and you're more pink or red, then you're probably cool toned. Now, here's the kicker. If you're kind of beige or grayish looking, and I know that sounds crazy, but look at my photo, I sort of look like an alien, that's neutral. And then if you really look in areas like my neck, my collarbone area, there's little pockets of like grayish green. That's the olive. But I've noticed neutral can definitely, in these situations, pull beige or kind of gray. And, you know, white is not exactly flattering on me for that reason. I don't wear white very often unless I have a tan, just because I do look kind of sick. I will note that if you are olive, the unfortunate news is there aren't very many olive complexion products unless you have medium or deep skin. Because for some reason, brands tend to think only certain depths of skin have certain undertones. So they think that only deeper complexions can be olive, as if it's a depth. But then they tend to think deep skin tones can't also be neutral and that they're all like red or warm, which is very strange to me. Somebody needs to send them a memo that like every skin depth can be every undertone. But if you find that you really want your foundation to match you perfectly, whether it's in depth or undertone, they do make foundation mixers. They make them in red, green, yellow, white for lightening. I don't know if they make one for deepening. I hope they do, because they should, because foundation ranges are horrible with deepness. Anyway, generally they don't change the finish or formula of the foundation, so it should apply normally. Moving on to application technique. I'm sure there's more than these two options, but I'm only listing two because we're all going to use two, a sponge or brush. These are dirty because I used them today for the B-roll. My favorite is the sponge, and my favorite sponge is the Real Technique sponge. I also really enjoy the Morphe Red sponge. However, some people prefer the coverage of the brush. I think it gives a more full coverage. And there are some foundations that just work better with it. Like the Anastasia Beverly Hills Luminous Foundation, I think applies best with a brush. Let's move on to concealer. I don't have a lot of concealers to show you because I kind of just like found one and stuck with it. There's another one that's online only that I get. I don't have it with me because I ran out and I just got this. Concealer works the same exact way as foundation. We have the same type of coverage. You can get light coverage, you can get medium full coverage. We have similar finishes. We have a little more luminous or natural. I don't know if they make dewy concealer. That would be kind of weird. And then there's matte. Mine is matte. Application techniques, also the same. You wouldn't use this brush. There are other brushes. I believe this is a concealer brush. They might make smaller ones. I like to use the pointy end of a sponge. I think it applies best for me, but you can get a concealer brush and it will work just as well. Let's talk about setting concealer. I don't set my concealer right now because I don't have the right product anymore for my age. You can set your concealer with either a loose powder or a pressed powder. Loose powder works best for people who are younger, according to the makeup class I took, or have very smooth under eye. I'm aging. I'm going to be 32 shortly, and I found loose powder made my under eye look incredibly dry. It didn't when I first started using it, so for me, I think it's an aging thing. But I also have deep set eyes, as you can see. I have these fun little creases. They've been here my entire life. They're not age related. It creases no matter what I do. It creases a little less with powder, but I'd rather it crease more and not look like I have cray paper for eye sockets. I learned in my makeup class that for someone of my age and older, using a pressed powder to set, and then if you choose, go over with loose powder, prevents the crepe eye. So that is an option if you would like to. I don't set mine at all, and it does pretty okay, but I also use a matte concealer, which probably has something to do with it. So those are all things you can try. As for finding a concealer, use all the same tips for finding a foundation. I do get my concealer in slightly warmer tones because I'm only using it under my eye. The yellowness, the light yellowness, cancels out some of my purple under eye, which is very handy. You can use concealer all over your face, on your blemishes or whatever, and in that regard, you would pick one that perfectly or close to matches your foundation. I don't do that. What I find is better is I do all of my foundation, I let that set, and then I'll go in with extra foundation for the spots I want covered. Like here, this was incredibly red. I just took some extra foundation. So I use my foundation as concealer for spots on my face, and I only conceal directly under my eyes. That's just my personal preference. You could do whatever you want. I would like to make a quick note on baking because some people will bake their under eye and some people will bake after like their whole face is done, but I think it belongs here. I'll address it again in the contour type video. I don't bake because I have too much of textured skin, and like I said, even just powder under my eyes, not cute. So I don't have any tips or tricks or suggestions for baking because that's something I have never done and I can't do now. So if you would like to find other videos, please do. Learn the makeup techniques that you think will be best for you. That's just nothing I ever learned. It doesn't work for my skin. Even before aging, I just have so much texture here and on my forehead that it would look really, really bad. Okay, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I helped you learn something, and I hope you can find a foundation that works really well for you. If you have any tips or tricks for color matching, please leave them in the comments. Help people out. That would be great. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. There will be more videos in this series coming up in the future. I try to space them out with some other content. And with that, I will see you guys next time.